The twin suns were sinking low behind the black mountains, painting the alien sky with streaks of orange and deep purple. The air in the small frontier town was thick with the smell of metal, dust, and nervous tension. Every local in the square had turned their eyes toward one man, the only human for hundreds of miles. His name was Jack, a tall, broad-shouldered figure with a worn leather jacket and calm, steady eyes. He stood in the middle of the gathering, his hands resting loosely. At his sides, across from him, a group of alien hunters with long tusks and plated armor laughed loudly. "You?" One of them scoffed. "You think you can hunt the Draxer beast with your bare hands?" Another added, "Even with weapons, it kills our strongest in minutes." Jack didn't answer right away. His gaze fixed instead on the jungle beyond the town walls, a dark sea of twisted trees and strange glowing plants. "I don't need weapons," he said quietly. "I'll bring it back alive." The square erupted in laughter, some in disbelief, others in anger. To the locals, this was more than madness. It was suicide. The Draxer beast was not just a predator. It was the predator, a creature that had survived hundreds of years of hunters, traps, and blasters. Its skin was said to turn aside blades. Its strength could crush stone, and its roar could freeze the heart of any living thing. But Jack only adjusted his jacket, glanced at the alien official keeping record, and said, "Where do I sign?" The official, a thin, gray-skinned creature with 4 eyes, looked at him as though he were already dead. Still, he pressed a thumb seal onto the hunt registry, recording Jack's challenge for the whole sector to see. The crowd moved as one, toward the massive gate that led to the wilds. It was tradition here. If someone was foolish enough to take the Draxer challenge, the whole town came to watch them leave. Jack walked steadily, his boots crunching over the dusty ground, his shadow stretching long in the light of the setting. Suns, past the gate lay the jungle, a place so dense and dangerous that even armed hunting parties rarely returned. The sound changed as soon as he crossed the threshold. The wind stilled, replaced by a chorus of alien insects and the distant, deep growl of something large behind him. The heavy gate slammed shut with a metallic echo that seemed to follow him into the trees. He moved carefully but with purpose, scanning the undergrowth. Every sense alert, somewhere out there, the Draxer was already aware of him. Said it could smell fear. And while Jack felt the cold spike of danger in his chest, his steps never slowed. Vines as thick as his arm hung from twisted branches, some glowing faintly in the fading light. Small creatures with too many eyes darted away at his approach, their claws scratching bark. But there was something else in the air, a rhythm, a deep vibration in the ground. Jack paused, crouching low, pressing his palm to the dirt. It was moving. Somewhere ahead, something massive pushed through the brush, each step like a drumbeat. The jungle grew silent except for that sound. No insects, no birds, only the slow, deliberate advance of the hunter. Jack stood, adjusting his stance, his muscles loose but ready through the tangle of leaves. He caught a glimpse of it, the legendary Draxer beast. It was bigger than any story had prepared him for. Its body covered in plates of dark, ridged armor, eyes glowing faintly red. Its breath steamed in the cooling air, and its claws sank deep into the earth with each step. The sight would have sent any sane hunter running. Jack only tilted his head slightly, studying its movement. The Draxer's eyes locked onto him, its body lowering, muscles rippling beneath armor. It let out a low rumble, a warning. Jack's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. The beast lunged forward, covering the distance between them in a blur of motion. Jack dove aside at the last moment, rolling through the dirt, feeling the rush of air as those claws missed his spine by inches. The impact of the beast hitting the ground shook the trees, sending leaves raining down. Jack came up on one knee, his hands open, eyes locked on the creature. The Draxer swung its massive head toward him. its mouth opening to reveal rows of jagged teeth. Its roar ripped through the jungle like thunder, echoing for miles. The sound was almost enough to make the ground vibrate under his feet. Still, Jack didn't move. He had come here for this moment. The alien spectators watching through remote drones were silent now. They had seen hunters flee before the first strike. No one had ever stood their ground like this. Jack slowly took a step forward, not away. The Draxer's head tilted. Almost confused, its growl deepened, claws flexing, somewhere in the shadows. Another growl answered higher-pitched. Closer, Jack's eyes flicked to the side. There wasn't just one Draxer, and now both of them were closing in. Jack's muscles tensed as the second growl came closer. His heartbeat steady, his eyes darting between the two shapes, moving in the dim jungle light. The first Draxer paced to his left, the second to his right, their heavy steps circling him like wolves, deciding when to strike. Above him, branches shook as birds burst into the air, fleeing the danger they sensed. Jack adjusted his footing, feeling the soft dirt shift beneath his boots. He knew if he ran, they would chase. If he froze, they would attack. The only way forward was to control the fight before it began. The first beast lunged, its armored head swinging low like a battering ram. Jack dropped and rolled toward its flank, his hands brushing the rough plates along its side. The second beast roared and charged, claws tearing the earth. Jack twisted at the last moment, forcing the two predators to collide in a thunderous crash. The impact shook the ground. Dust rising around them, both Draxers snarled, angry now, their breath steaming in the cool air. Jack kept moving, never staying in one spot long enough to be cornered, his eyes scanning the thick vines overhead, some of them strong enough to hold a creature's weight. He remembered the old Earth stories his grandfather told him, of hunters who didn't overpower their prey but outhought them. This was no different. The beasts were powerful, but they weren't used to prey that fought like this. One of them snapped its jaws inches from his leg, the hot stink of its breath filling the air. Jack kicked upward, striking its lower jaw. Not enough to harm it, but enough to stagger it back. The second beast circled, its glowing eyes locked on him, its movements slower now. Cautious, they were testing him, trying to read his weakness. Somewhere in the distance, the faint hum of alien drones followed him, streaming the hunt to the gathered crowd in the city square. Jack didn't need to see them to imagine the faces' disbelief. Maybe a little fear. They were watching a human do something none of them dared, and he wasn't just surviving, he was holding his own. The Draxers began to coordinate, one rushing low, the other moving high to cut off his escape. Jack's breath came sharp now, sweat running down his face. He dove forward toward the smaller gap between them, his fingers catching a vine overhead. In one motion, he swung upward, his boots kicking into the side of the larger beast's head. The creature bellowed, thrashing. Jack landed behind it, his hand gripping a sharp shard of stone from the ground. He didn't strike to kill. Instead, he sliced through a thick, hanging vine, letting it drop like a heavy rope across the beast's shoulders. The creature spun, its armored plates catching the vine. Twisting it around itself, the second Draxer rushed in to help its companion. Tangling further, Jack moved fast, weaving more vines over their legs, using the jungle as his weapon. It wasn't enough to trap them fully, but it slowed them, and that was all he needed. He stepped back, chest heaving, studying the way they tried to tear free. They were strong, but the vines were stronger than they expected. Their claws only got stuck deeper the more they pulled. The first beast managed to rip itself loose with a roar. Charging him again, Jack sidestepped, slamming his palm into its side to push himself clear. His eyes caught the faint glimmer of water through the trees, a swamp, thick and dark. If he could draw them there, the mud might slow them even more. He sprinted toward it, the Draxers giving chase, the ground turning softer with each step. Reeds and alien flowers brushing his legs. The first beast lunged, but its front legs sank deep into the muck. Jack spun, planting his foot on its back and leaping to a nearby root. The second beast tried to follow, but the swamp swallowed its legs faster. Now both were stuck waist-deep, thrashing, their roars shaking the reeds. Jack crouched on the root, breathing hard, watching as the mud dragged them down slowly. They wouldn't drown, not yet, but they couldn't reach him either. He took the moment to study them, their breathing, the way they used their tails for balance. Every detail mattered. Asterix back in the city. The alien crowd watching the drone feed had gone silent. They had seen hunters with rifles fail in minutes. Now they were watching a human using nothing but speed. Timing and the land itself whispers passed between them. Maybe the stories about humans weren't exaggerated after all. The Draxers began to calm, their movements less frantic. Their eyes still locked on him. Jack knew they were learning too. They'd remember this, adapt. He had to decide whether to push further or retreat. The hunt wasn't about killing. At least, not for him. It was about proving something. Maybe to them, maybe to himself. He climbed down from the root. Stepping lightly through the shallows, one of the beasts hissed low, a sound almost like warning, but Jack didn't attack. Instead, he walked past them, keeping his hands open and his eyes steady. The swamp released them slowly as he left. The mud pulling away like reluctant chains. The jungle closed around him again. The sounds of distant creatures returning. The air thick with the scent of wet earth and danger. Somewhere behind him, the Draxers moved. Following at a distance now. Not rushing, not lunging, as if they had decided the hunt wasn't over. Just paused. Jack didn't look back, but a faint smile tugged at his mouth. He had entered their world and survived the first clash. Now came the real challenge, earning the respect of something that feared nothing. Asterisk, the jungle was quieter now, but it wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the kind that came when something powerful was watching. Jack could feel it in the way the air seemed heavier, in the way the leaves barely moved despite the faint breeze. Somewhere in the shadows, the Draxers followed, not hunting like predators, but studying him like equals. He moved slowly, keeping his steps light, making sure his back was never fully exposed. His fingers brushed the bark of strange, broad trees. Some of them hollow and pulsing faintly with an inner glow. The ground sloped downward, and soon he found himself in a place where the light barely touched the floor, only thin beams. Cutting through the thick canopy above, Jack stopped, kneeling to study a cluster of tracks in the damp soil. Not just Draxer prints, but other creatures, smaller, quicker. Some fresh, some days old. He knew this meant he was entering a feeding ground. A place where the jungle's laws were even stricter. The wrong sound here could turn him from hunter to prey. The sound came then, not from behind, but ahead. A slow, deliberate scrape. Like claws on stone, Jack's eyes narrowed. The Draxers weren't the only danger in these woods. From the darkness ahead, something else emerged, tall and skeletal. Its skin stretched tight over bone, its head crowned with twisted antlers that dripped with some dark liquid. The creature didn't rush him. Instead, it tilted its head, sniffing the air, its movements sharp and jerky like a puppet on strings. Jack realized this wasn't a rival predator. It was a scavenger. One that followed bigger hunters, hoping to claim their kills. And if it was here, that meant the Draxers weren't far. Behind him, the undergrowth rustled, the deep, rumbling breath of one beast carrying through the shadows. The scavenger hissed and backed away, its glowing eyes darting from Jack to the sound. Then it vanished. Into the brush, Jack stayed still, knowing any sudden movement now might trigger the wrong kind of reaction from the beasts that shadowed him. A low growl rolled through the clearing, and one of the Draxers stepped into view, its armor glinting faintly in the beams of light. Its eyes locked on him. The other appeared moments later, circling to his right. This wasn't an ambush. It was a test. Jack could feel it in the way they moved. Slower, more deliberate, not striking yet. He lowered himself into a crouch, his palms pressing against the earth. The jungle smells filled his nose, wet soil. Sharp resin from broken vines. The faint metallic temps of the Draxer's breath. They were close enough now that he could see the scars crisscrossing their armor. Each mark a story of a battle survived. Jack didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, he shifted his weight and began to move sideways, not away from them, but between them. The smaller one's head followed him closely, its muscles tensing as if ready to pounce, but the larger one let out a single sharp grunt, a caw, and the smaller froze. Jack noted that sound, filing it away. It was communication. He began weaving through the trees, making sure the beasts had to follow single file instead. Of flanking him, it gave him a small advantage, but also forced him into narrower paths. At one point, he ducked beneath a curtain of thick vines. The first beast pushing through behind him, the vines snapping like wet rope. A deep part of him wanted to run. But he kept his pace measured, steady. The Draxers matched it, neither falling back nor surging ahead. They were still watching, still deciding. Then the ground beneath him shifted soft moss, giving way to a pit of black mud. He caught himself on a root, but the lead Draxer stepped straight into it, its massive weight sinking. Fast, it roared in frustration, the sound bouncing off the trees. The second beast rushed forward, trying to help. Jack didn't waste the moment. He grabbed a fallen branch the size of his arm and drove it deep into the mud near the trapped leg, wedging it so the beast could push against it. It took several tries, but finally the Draxer hauled itself free. Its chest heaving, it stood there, staring at him, its red eyes bright in the dim light. Then something shifted in its stance. Its head dipped just slightly, not in submission, but in something closer to acknowledgement. The second beast gave a short, low sound that Jack guessed was approval. He turned away, continuing deeper into the jungle, not trying to bind them, not trying to chase them off, just letting the strange rhythm between them build. This wasn't the kind of hunt anyone back in the city would recognize. It was slower, heavier, like a game of moves and countermoves. Far above, the alien drones still followed, their lenses capturing every second. Back in the city square, the crowd was restless, some whispering that the Draxers should have killed him by now. Others beginning to think he might actually survive. The elder hunters said nothing, their eyes fixed on the screens, recognizing the rare dance playing out before them. Jack reached a clearing where a shallow stream cut through the earth, the water cold and clear. He knelt to drink, not taking his eyes off the beasts. They watched, but didn't move closer. Instead, the smaller one bent its head to the stream as well. Lapping water, the larger stood guard, its gaze never leaving Jack. For the first time since entering the jungle, he felt the tension shift, not gone, but changing. This wasn't about the kill anymore. It was about what came next. The stream's gentle sound was the only thing breaking the silence. But beneath it, Jack could still hear the slow, steady breathing of the Draxers. They weren't stalking him now. They were present, and that was even stranger in the city. The hunters said the beasts never followed without attacking, never shared ground without blood. Yet here they were, standing only a few steps away. A sudden crack of branches shattered the stillness. Something heavy was moving fast through the jungle toward them. The Draxers instantly turned, their bodies tensing. Jack followed their gaze and caught sight of a blur, a smaller predator. Sleek and black, its eyes bright green. It darted in, low and fast, its jaws snapping for the smaller Draxer's leg. The attack was so sudden that even the beast seemed surprised. It roared in pain, stumbling into the stream, water splashing high. The predator bit deep before darting away into the undergrowth. The larger Draxer charged after it, but came up short as the jungle swallowed the attacker. The smaller one limped to the bank, its front leg dripping blood that steamed faintly in the air. Jack didn't move right away. The larger Draxer turned its head toward him. Eyes sharp, but there was no threat there. Only something like a warning, or maybe a plea. The smaller beast's breathing was heavy now, the wound ugly and deep. Jack knew enough about injuries to see that if it didn't get cleaned fast, infection would set in. Every survival instinct told him to stay away, to let nature take its course. But there was another part of him, the stubborn part that had brought him into this hunt without weapons, that stepped forward. The larger Draxer tensed, a deep growl rumbling from its chest. Jack raised his hand slowly. Showing he carried nothing, he moved to the edge of the stream where the injured beast stood, its armor plates shifting as it tried to steady itself. The smell of blood was thick now, metallic and sharp. Jack crouched low, letting the beast see his hands. The jungle felt smaller, tighter, as if even the air was watching. He dipped his hand into the cold water, letting it run over his fingers. Then he splashed it gently against the wound. The Draxer flinched, but didn't pull away. The larger one stepped closer, its shadow falling over them both. Jack ignored the prickle of danger at his back, focusing instead on cleaning the blood away. The beast's breathing slowed just slightly. He searched the bank for something useful. Finding a broad leaf from a plant he recognized, its sap was thick and carried a natural antiseptic. He tore the leaf, squeezing the sap into the wound. The beast gave a sharp snort, the muscles in its leg twitching, but it didn't strike. Instead, it lowered its head, almost as if accepting the strange ritual. The larger Draxer made a sound, then not a roar, not a growl, but a short, deep thrum. Jack didn't know its meaning, but he felt it in his chest. The smaller one answered with a softer noise, something almost like relief when he finished. He stepped back, giving them space. The injured beast tested its leg. Limping, but able to put weight on it, the larger one turned its gaze on him again. There was no fear in those eyes, no anger either. Only the weight of a decision being made. Jack knew in that moment that the hunt had changed. Whatever the city drones were recording now wasn't a contest anymore. It was something older, something that belonged to the jungle. The three of them stayed there for a while, a stream flowing between them, the sun dipping lower through the canopy. Somewhere far away, the alien spectators would be shouting, arguing over what they were seeing. The hunters who had mocked him would be silent. Eventually, the larger Draxer moved, not toward him, but past him, stepping into the trees. The injured one followed more slowly, then both stopped, turning their heads back. Jack felt the meaning without words. They wanted him to come. He hesitated only a second before stepping into the shadow of the jungle after them. The air cooler now, filled with the scent of damp earth and leaves. They led him deeper, the terrain shifting, the trees growing wider, the ground rising. The sounds of the jungle faded until there was only the echo of their steps. Ahead, the trees parted into a narrow stone canyon, walls covered in moss and glowing vines. The beasts entered without pause. Jack followed, every instinct alert. Somewhere inside, the air felt older, heavier, as though he had stepped into a place that the rest of the world had forgotten. The canyon walls rose high on both sides, so close together that only thin ribbons of light slipped through the cracks above. The air inside was cool and damp, carrying the faint smell of stone and something else, something alive. Jack followed the Draxers carefully, his boots pressing into soft moss that swallowed sound. It felt strange. It's like walking through a place that had not been touched by any other hunter. The beasts moved with purpose. Their heavy steps slow, but sure. The injured one limped. Yet it didn't slow the pace much. Every so often, the larger one would glance back to make sure Jack was still following. They weren't leading him like prey. They were guiding him. As they rounded a bend, Jack saw movement ahead. At first, he thought it was more Draxers, but then the light caught the shapes and he realized what he was seeing: young ones. Smaller, but already armored. Their eyes a softer shade of red. They stood in the shadows near the canyon wall, silent, watching him with a mix of curiosity and caution. Jack stopped in his tracks, the truth striking him hard. This wasn't just a canyon. It was a nesting ground, the kind of place no outsider had ever seen and lived to tell about in the city. Hunters spoke in whispers about Draxer breeding grounds, claiming they were deep in uncharted jungle, protected by the most aggressive of the beasts. Yet here he stood, unarmed, surrounded, and still breathing. The injured beast moved toward the young. Lowering its head, one of the smaller ones stepped forward, brushing against its wounded leg. The larger Draxer remained by Jack's side, its presence like a wall between him and the rest of the group. Jack kept still, every instinct telling him that one wrong move here could end everything. The air was tense, but not hostile, more like the air before a storm. Then, from deeper within the canyon, a sound echoed, a low, resonant call, not quite a roar, more like a voice. The Draxers lifted their heads in unison, answering with deep chest rumbles from the shadows. A massive shape emerged, bigger than any Draxer Jack had seen, its armor darker, almost black. The edges scarred white, its eyes glowed like embers. And each step it took carried the weight of authority. This had to be the Alpha, the leader of them all. It stopped a few paces away. Lowering its head to study him, Jack met its gaze. Feeling the intensity behind those eyes, there was no fear, no hesitation, just a steady exchange of presence, as if each was measuring the other. The canyon was utterly silent, even the young. One stood frozen. The Alpha took a step closer, its shadow falling across him. Jack's muscles stayed loose, his breathing steady. The beast leaned down until its armored snout was only inches from his face, the heat of its breath rolling over him. Then it did something Jack never expected. It inhaled deeply, scenting him. Slowly, it moved past him, brushing his shoulder. With the edge of its plated armor, the contact was light, almost deliberate. Then it walked toward the injured one, inspecting the wound Jack had treated. The Alpha made a low sound, almost approving. Jack realized the drones in the sky above must be catching every second of this. Back in the city, the crowd would be losing their minds. No one had ever stood this close to an Alpha and lived. And now they were watching one walk past a human as though he were part of the pack. The Alpha turned back toward Jack, staring for a long moment before giving a short, sharp call. The other Draxers shifted, the young ones retreating deeper into the canyon, the injured one moving to follow. The larger guardians stayed at his side. The meaning was clear. He was to walk with them. Jack obeyed. Stepping further into the canyon, the moss underfoot giving way to smoother stone, strange markings etched into the walls. He ran his fingers over them, feeling grooves worn deep by centuries. They weren't random. They were patterns, symbols, maybe even a kind of language. The deeper they went, the more the air felt charged. Like the moments before lightning strikes, the sound of flowing water reached his ears, and soon they stepped into a wide cavern lit by the glow of bioluminescent plants. A pool of clear water shimmered in the center. The Alpha moved to the pool's edge and drank slowly, the others following. Then the great beast looked at Jack and gave a low, almost gentle growl, the kind that didn't sound like a threat. Jack stepped forward cautiously, knelt, and cupped water in his hands. Drinking, the water was cool and sweet, unlike anything he had tasted before. When he finished, the alpha rumbled again, the sound rolling through the cavern. The others joined in, the noise deep and resonant. Jack felt it more than he heard it, a vibration through his chest and bones. It wasn't a warning, it was something else, something like acceptance for the first time. Jack understood he hadn't just been allowed into their territory. He had been invited into their circle. The deep rumble of the Draxers still echoed in Jack's chest as they left the glowing cavern. The air outside the canyon felt warmer now, carrying the heavy sense of the jungle again. The alpha led the way. The injured one walked steadily, its limp less severe, and the large guardian kept its position close to Jack's side. For a time, everything felt balanced, almost calm. But that calm cracked when a sound drifted through the trees, faint at first. Then sharper, the high-pitched whine of engines. Jack froze, his eyes lifting toward the narrow gap of sky above. Somewhere far off, the steady hum of alien flyers grew louder. The alpha stopped too, its head turning sharply toward the sound. The young ones hidden deeper in the canyon gave quick, sharp cries, the kind that carried fear. Jack knew this sound all too well. It was the kind of transport used by hunters, the kind that carried men with weapons. The larger Draxer's armor plates shifted restlessly. The injured one growled low. The alpha gave a deep, short roar, a command, and the others began to move. Not toward the safety of the canyon, but toward the jungle's edge. Jack understood immediately. This was not retreat. This was preparation to defend. He followed as they moved through the undergrowth, silent except for the occasional snap of a branch under their massive feet. Soon they reached a ridge that overlooked a clearing, and there, settling into the grass below, were two dark, sleek flyers, their engines winding down from the first ship. 6 armored hunters stepped out, tall, insect-like aliens with long rifles and bright scanning visors. From the second, 3 more followed, carrying heavy net launchers. Jack's stomach tightened. Those weapons were made for live capture, the kind of tools used to take Draxers to off-world arenas. The alpha crouched low behind the ridge, its eyes locked on the hunters below. The others mirrored its posture. Jack stayed low too, but his mind was already racing. If they fought openly here, even the alpha could be killed. The rifles carried high-velocity rounds designed to pierce heavy armor. One of the hunters activated a small drone, letting it rise into the air, its scanner sweeping across the clearing. Jack knew if it got close enough, it would detect the heat of the Draxers hiding behind the ridge. His eyes darted to a fallen branch beside him, thick and dry. He picked it up, snapping it in two with a sharp crack. The sound carried just enough to make the drone pause and turn. Then it drifted toward the noise, away from the ridge. Jack slipped down the slope silently, moving into the shadows of the clearing. The Draxers stayed hidden, their eyes following him. The drone's sensors whirred as it swept the area. Jack waited until it passed directly overhead, then leaped up, grabbing it with both hands. The machine buzzed wildly, but he slammed it down hard against a rock, sparks flashing as its core cracked. The hunters below shouted, their heads snapping toward the sound. Jack didn't run. Instead, he shouted something loud and harsh in their direction, making himself the focus. The hunters' visors locked onto him instantly. 2 raised rifles, another aimed a net launcher. The first shot cracked past his shoulder. Splintering bark, he dove behind a tree. Heart pounding. Above, the alpha gave a low rumble, the kind that made the air itself vibrate. It was waiting for the moment the hunters advanced, spreading out to flank Jack's position, their attention locked on him. They didn't see the shadows moving low through the grass behind them. The attack was silent at first. The guardian Draxer surging from the side, its massive head slamming into the nearest hunter, sending him flying into another. The injured beast lunged from the opposite angle, its limp forgotten, claws ripping the net launcher from its target's hands. Then the alpha roared, a sound so deep and powerful it seemed to crack the air. The hunters froze just for a second. But a second was all the Draxers needed. They moved like a storm, armor plates crashing into bodies, tails sweeping legs from under them, claws tearing weapons apart. Jack joined the chaos, rushing one of the stunned hunters and slamming the butt of his own stolen rifle into its visor. The glass cracked, the alien fell backward. The fight was over in less than a minute. The surviving hunters scrambled toward their flyers. The Alpha gave a final roar that chased them into the air, engines screaming as they fled. The clearing went still again. The grass flattened, the air smelling of ozone and blood. Jack stood in the middle of it all, breathing hard. The Draxers moved back to him, the Guardian stopping close enough for him to feel the heat of its breath. The injured one pressed its armored head lightly against his arm. The Alpha approached last, its steps slow, deliberate. It stood before him for a long moment, the red in its eyes glowing like embers. Then it lowered its head until it almost touched his. The meaning was unmistakable. He was no longer just a stranger in their world. He was one of them now. The jungle felt different now. The silence was not the silence of fear, but of respect. The Draxers moved with Jack at the center of their formation, the Alpha in the lead, the Guardian at his right, the injured one at his left. Their heavy steps pressing deep into the soft earth. The canopy above let through streaks of gold as the twin suns dipped lower. They were heading back toward the city. Jack could feel it in the slope of the land and the thinning of the trees. The closer they came, the more distant noises reached them. The murmur of voices, the clang of metal gates, the hum of power lines. The city had no idea what was walking toward it when they broke through the final line of jungle. The outer wall rose high before them, made of layered steel and reinforced stone. Guards stood at the top, their weapons slung carelessly. One of them spotted Jack first, leaning forward as if unsure what he was seeing. Then the guard froze, his hand gripping the rail. Gasps and shouts spread along the wall as more eyes found the massive shapes moving with Jack. Alarms began to blare, but no one fired. Perhaps it was shock. Perhaps it was the fact that the Alpha's gaze swept across them like a storm. Silencing their courage, the gates didn't open at first. A voice over the intercom demanded Jack's step away from the beasts, but he didn't move. He just kept walking. The Draxers matched his pace, the Alpha's deep rumble carrying over the sound of the alarms inside the city square. People began to gather. The drone feeds had stopped after the canyon, but rumors had spread fast. They expected to see a human returning bloodied or not at all. Instead, they saw something no one in living memory had witnessed. The most dangerous creatures on the planet walking calmly beside him. The gates finally creaked open. Not because the guards decided, but because the Alpha's presence seemed to demand it. The crowd's noise swelled and then hushed all at once as the group stepped through. Eyes wide, mouths open, the hunters who had mocked him days ago stood near the front. Their faces pale, weapons hanging limp at their sides. One of them muttered something under his breath. But no one laughed. The elder hunters came forward. Their expressions unreadable. The oldest among them, a scarred alien with silver plating on his chest, stepped close. "What did you do?" he asked, voice low, as if afraid to disturb the air. Jack looked him in the eye, then glanced at the Alpha. "I didn't catch them," he said. "I earned their respect." A ripple went through the crowd, disbelief mixed with awe. The Alpha moved past Jack, towering over the elder hunter. It lowered its head slightly. Not in aggression, but in recognition. The elder stepped back, his hands shaking. The Guardian and the injured beast stood beside Jack now, forming a wall between him and the crowd. The young ones were not there. Jack knew they were safe in the canyon, far from the city's noise. But their future was tied to this moment. Someone shouted from the back, "That's not possible." Draxers kill without warning, but the voice was drowned by the murmurs of the rest, people who had seen the truth with their own eyes. Jack took a slow breath, then reached up and placed his hand on the guardian's armor. The beast didn't. "Move away." Its rumble, low and steady. "It's possible," Jack said. "You just have to stop trying to kill everything you fear." The elder hunters exchanged glances, but none challenged him. The alpha gave one final, long look at the city, then turned away, its massive body casting a shadow that stretched across the square. The guardian and the injured one followed, Jack walking with them until they reached the gate again. He paused there, the air heavy with silence. "The hunt's over," he said, "but the story's just beginning." And with that, he stepped back into the jungle, the gates closing slowly behind him. From that day, no one in the city dared take the Draxer challenge again, not because of fear, but because the story had changed. The human who had gone into the jungle without weapons had returned not with a kill, but with allies no one thought could be tamed, and somewhere deep in the wilds. When the twin suns set and the air cooled, a chorus of deep rumbles and roars would roll across the land, not as warnings, but as greetings. A reminder that one man had crossed the line between hunter and hunted and found something far greater.